Have you ever had one of those days? For me, it was a Tuesday. I remember it so clearly. I was sitting right here, staring at a proposal I had to finish, and the words they wouldn't come. It felt like trying to walk through mud. My mind was foggy. I felt heavy. And I looked over at my coffee, which had gone cold for the second time that morning, and just felt this wave of complete exhaustion. It wasn't just about being tired. It was a deeper feeling, a sense of being stuck, utterly and completely stuck. And the really frustrating part was, I thought I was doing everything right. You know, I was trying to stay positive. I had my cleansed jade keychain right there on my desk, the one we talked about a few videos ago. I was trying to set my intentions for the day. But honestly, it felt like I was trying to fill a bucket that had a slow, invisible leak somewhere. Have you ever felt that? That feeling where you know you're putting in all this good energy, all this effort, but it just seems to be draining away and you can't figure out why. It's a quiet kind of frustration that can really wear you down. That feeling, well, it sent me down a long path of discovery, reading and trying to understand what I was missing. And my journey led me to the most unexpected place. It wasn't a new book or a new crystal. It was my chair. I know it sounds crazy, but I started to wonder, what if this invisible leak wasn't something mystical? What if it was something practical, right in front of me the whole time? I began to question if where I was pointing my body for 8 hours, a day could be secretly holding me back. And what I discovered on that journey, it was really eye-opening for me. So today, I wanted to share that personal journey with you. We'll explore this idea together, and I'll break it down into the 3 stages of my own discovery. First, we'll touch on the simple, physical space around us and how it might be affecting us more than we think. Then, we'll go a little deeper and explore how our mindset and our personal beliefs can play a huge role in all of this. And finally, I'll share how I tried to bring all of those ideas together in a way that felt authentic for me. This isn't about magic rules or a one-size-fits-all solution. It's just shared experience. So if you're comfortable, grab your drink of choice, settle in, and let's start this journey together. So the first stop on my little journey of discovery was my physical space, my actual, tangible home office. I started reading a little bit about different philosophies of space, including Feng Shui. And I want to be clear, I approached this not as an expert, but as a curious beginner, just trying to find things that made sense to me. And one of the first ideas I stumbled upon, which came up again and again in different forms, was this concept of the command position. The basic idea, as I understood it, is that it's often suggested to sit where you can see the main door to your room without being directly in line with it. The thinking behind this is that if your back is to the entrance, your subconscious mind, that ancient, primal part of your brain that's always trying to keep you safe, can't ever fully relax. It's always on a very low level of alert. Now, at first, I brushed it off. I thought, that sounds a little silly. I live in a safe place, I know who's home. My desk looked good where it was, facing a nice window. But I couldn't shake the idea. Then, I thought about this one specific Zoom call I'd had. It was a huge presentation for a project I'd poured my heart into. I knew my material inside and out. But during the call, I felt so flustered. I remember my heart racing. I was stumbling over my words. and I felt this constant, nagging feeling of being off balance, even though everything on the screen was fine. I just couldn't access that feeling of calm confidence I needed. So that night, mostly out of curiosity, I decided to just try it, just as an experiment. It was kind of a pain. I had to move some furniture, and it honestly messed up the look of the room a bit. I went to bed not expecting much at all. But the next day, I had another important call, and the difference, I can only describe it as night and day. It wasn't that I was suddenly smarter or that the presentation was magically better, but I felt different. I felt grounded. I felt a sense of calm control, like my energy was contained and focused instead of being scattered and anxious. I could breathe more deeply. My thoughts felt clearer, and that was the first major clue for me. A hint that maybe, just maybe, our physical environment has a much deeper impact on our performance and our feelings than we consciously realize. That little discovery with my chair made me look at everything else on my desk with new eyes. I started to see my clutter not just as a mess to be cleaned up, but as a kind of physical map of my inner world. It was a fascinating and slightly confronting exercise. For example, that little pile of bills I kept meaning to pay. I looked at it and realized that, for me, it represented a quiet feeling of avoidance. Those old notebooks from projects that never quite took off. They felt a little bit like past disappointments I hadn't fully processed or let go of. Even a few tangled up charging cords in a drawer felt like, well, like my own tangled up thoughts on most days. This is what I mean about a map. Each object told a story. It reminds me a little of what Marie Kondo talks about with sparking joy, which is a beautiful concept. But this felt a little different. For me, it was also about noticing what was quietly draining my joy or draining my focus without me even realizing it. And this leads to a little invitation for you if you're open to it. You don't have to move or clean a single thing. Just for a moment, I invite you to gently look at your own desk or the space right around you, and just pick one object or one little pile of clutter. Now, without any judgment at all, and that's the most important part, no judgment. Just quietly ask yourself, what feeling does this one thing give me? Is it stress? Is it nostalgia? Is it guilt? Inspiration? Maybe it's nothing at all. There is no right or wrong answer. The goal isn't to fix anything right now. It's just to practice a little bit of awareness, to start learning how to read the map of our own space. Because once I started to see my space as a living reflection of my inner world, it naturally led me to the next part of my journey, exploring the mindset and the beliefs that created that map in the first place. So this new awareness of my physical space was the first layer. It was incredibly helpful, but it also led me to ask a deeper question. Why? Why was my space this way to begin with? And that took me to the next part of my journey, which was less about the objects on my desk and more about exploring my own mindset and beliefs. Now, this next part is a little more personal, and I want to share it with the understanding that this might not resonate with everyone, and that's perfectly okay. We all find our meaning and motivation in different places. For me, this journey unexpectedly connected back to my faith in a way that was very new to me. I started thinking about a word I grew up hearing, but maybe never fully understood. Stewardship. The idea of being a good steward, a responsible caretaker of the things you've been given. It brought to mind an old story, the parable of the talents. You may have heard it. In the story, a master is going on a long trip, and he gives 3 of his servants different amounts of money, or talents, as they were called, to look after while he's away. When he returns, he finds that 2 of the servants had invested the money and doubled it. But the 3rd servant, who was operating from a place of fear, had simply buried his portion in the ground to keep it safe. He had nothing more to show for it than what he started with, and the master was pleased with the first 2, but deeply disappointed in the one who hid his gift away. And listening to that story with new ears, I stopped seeing it as being just about money. For me, the talents became my skills, my ideas, my creativity, my time, the very energy I wake up with each day. And I had to ask myself a tough question. By allowing my workspace, my creative workshop, to be chaotic and draining, am I honoring these gifts? Or am I, in my own way, burying them under a pile of clutter out of fear or overwhelm or just plain neglect? Wow, that question was a powerful shift for me. It transformed a boring chore, cleaning my office, into what felt like a meaningful act of gratitude. It wasn't about trying to impress anyone. It was about creating a respectful, dignified home for my own potential to grow. So if that perspective gave me a new why, the next question was the how. How could I actually approach this in a way that didn't just feel like another stressful item on my to-do list? And that led me to the gentle wisdom found in many Eastern philosophies, particularly the practice of mindfulness. I began to truly understand that my messy desk was often just a mirror. On days my thoughts were racing and anxious, my desk would somehow end up covered in coffee cups and scattered notes. The outer chaos was a direct reflection of my inner chaos. And the solution, I learned, wasn't to fight the chaos with more frantic energy, but to bring a quiet intention to it. And I'd like to invite you to try a very short practice with me right now, if you feel comfortable. You don't have to move a thing. Just take a gentle breath in and out. Now, in your mind's eye, I want you to imagine reaching for one single object on your desk. Maybe it's a pen, or a book, or that coffee cup. Imagine the feeling of your hand closing around it. Notice its weight, its temperature, its texture. And now, very slowly in your mind, imagine placing it exactly where it belongs. As you set it down, take another deep breath. That's it. That's the whole practice. It's not about the cleaning itself. It's about bringing your full, gentle attention to one small, simple action. It's a way to interrupt the cycle of frantic thoughts. It's a way to create a moment of outer quiet, to hopefully invite some inner quiet, too. And I think it's important to say that this kind of peace doesn't mean we become passive or that we stop striving for our goals. For me, it was the opposite. It was about finding a way to pursue my goals from a place of calm, focused energy, instead of that frantic, stressed out energy that I knew so well. It's the difference between a frantic scramble and a powerful, steady glide. And this is where it all started to come together for me, where the different pieces of my journey connected in a way I never expected. So I had these 2 powerful, but seemingly separate, ideas swirling in my head. And for the longest time, I have to be honest with you, I felt completely torn. It really felt like I was trying to walk down two different paths that were going in opposite directions. On one hand, I was learning about creating an intentional space, arranging my office to invite in opportunity to be a better steward of my talents. This path felt very active. It was about doing. It was about respectfully shaping my world with my hands and my choices. And then on the other hand, I was learning about mindfulness and the wisdom of letting go. The concept of non-attachment, of finding peace right where you are, without needing anything to change. This path felt very internal, almost passive. It was about being. It was about accepting the world as it is, without feeling that constant push and pull of desire. And my mind just kept getting stuck in this frustrating loop. I'd ask myself, how can you genuinely try to attract something like more abundance while also practicing not being attached to getting it? It felt like a total contradiction, a war inside my own head. One day I'd be moving my desk around, feeling proactive and empowered. The next, I'd be sitting there trying to meditate, telling myself that wanting itself was the problem. I honestly felt like a hypocrite. I was on the verge of just giving up on all of it, thinking it was just too complicated, and that maybe I wasn't spiritual enough to get it. And then, the breakthrough came when I absolutely least expected it. It wasn't during some deep meditation session or while reading a profound book. It was a normal Saturday afternoon. The house was quiet. I had some soft music playing, and I was just slowly cleaning my desk. I wasn't trying to achieve anything. I wasn't trying to attract wealth or reach enlightenment or become a better person. I was just mindfully wiping down the wooden surface of my desk. And in that simple, quiet, unassuming moment, it just clicked. Like a lock turning, all the pieces just fell into place. I suddenly saw, with a clarity that actually made me stop and catch my breath, that the act itself was the meeting point. The physical action was the bridge between all these ideas that felt so separate. I realized that the physical act of creating order in my space, which is a principle of Feng Shui, when I did it with a heart of gratitude and respect for my potential, which, for me, is stewardship, was the meditation itself, which is the practice of mindfulness. It wasn't about choosing one path. It was realizing they were all different descriptions of the same beautiful, integrated action. It wasn't about doing versus being. It was about doing with a certain quality of being. The best way I can describe it is like a recipe for a beautiful meal. For me, the principles of Feng Shui were like the high-quality ingredients that you choose with care. The idea of stewardship was the deep respect and gratitude you have for those ingredients, knowing they are a gift. And the practice of mindfulness was the slow, careful, loving way you stir the pot. You can't just have one. You need all three to create something truly nourishing for the soul. And that insight changed everything for me. I stopped looking for a magic trick. I stopped trying to follow a set of external rules that felt conflicting. And instead, I started focusing on just one thing, a feeling of alignment. A feeling where my outer world, my inner beliefs, and my present moment actions all felt like they were in perfect, peaceful harmony. And that feeling of alignment, that's really what this whole journey has been about for me. It wasn't about finding a magic formula, but about discovering a more peaceful, harmonious way to move through my day. So, we've journeyed together through a few layers today, haven't we? We started by gently looking at our physical space and exploring the idea that it might be a mirror for our inner world. Then we touched on our own personal beliefs and how they have the power to transform a simple chore like cleaning into something deeply meaningful. And finally, I shared my own aha moment, that feeling of seeing how all these different ideas can flow together as one. And for me, it all comes down to small, gentle actions. So, as we close our time together today, I wanted to share those 3 little experiments that I mentioned earlier, the ones that really helped me get started on this path. Please know these aren't rules, and there's absolutely no pressure. They're just simple invitations, in case one of them calls to you today. The first invitation is the power move. Just to see what it feels like, maybe for one afternoon, to sit in a position where you can see your door. The intention here isn't about superstition. It's simply to invite a feeling of calm command over your own personal space. The second invitation is the 5-minute cleanse. The goal isn't a perfectly clean desk. The true intention is to practice bringing your full mindful attention to one small task for just 5 minutes as a gift to your own peace of mind. And the third invitation is the anchor of gratitude, placing one single object on your desk that reminds you of your why. For me, this practice is about grounding my work in a sense of purpose, not just pressure. This journey is so personal, and I truly believe that we can all learn so much from each other's experiences. I would genuinely love to hear your story. Which part of our conversation today resonated with you the most? Was it the story about the chair, the idea of clutter as a map, or the feeling of finding alignment? Please feel free to share your thoughts or your own experiences in the comments below. I promise I read them, and your story, your perspective, could truly be the aha moment for someone else in this beautiful community we're building together. This is an ongoing exploration for me, and I'll be sharing many more of these discoveries, these little experiments, and these personal stories right here. If you'd like to continue this journey of finding more alignment, peace, and gentle prosperity in our busy lives together, I would be so honored if you would. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so we can stay connected. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your wonderful energy with me today. Remember to be gentle with yourself. You're doing great. I'll talk to you soon.